Sadiq Khan takes your calls.
Good morning, it's 10:04 on Friday the 7th of September. This is Sadiq Khan bringing you your latest edition of Speak to Sadiq on LBC. I'm here for the next 30 minutes or so with James O'Brien, who has his feet up, taking your calls. This is your chance to put any questions you like to me, the Mayor of London. I'll do my best to answer your questions. So the numbers for you to get your questions on air are 0345 6060973, or you can email sadiq@lbc.co.uk, or you can text on 84850. Don't forget, you can also watch Speak to Sadiq on the website lbc.co.uk or live on your LBC Facebook page. So over to you, James.
Thank you very much, Sadiq Khan. And I can tell you there are phone lines free into the building, so if you've got a question that you want to put to the Mayor, the number you need, once again, is 0345 6060973. And I won't let him out of the studio until he's answered all of them. You seem quite upbeat, considering that ritual humiliation that you were subjected to in Parliament Square last weekend. Well, listen,
people, your viewers who are watching on the website and Facebook will know I'm currently wearing my yellow bikini. There's a great story. I mean, I won't name him, but one of the Conservative members of the Cabinet, who in the 80s was mocked on Spitting Image, was telling me a story how his dad bought the Spitting Image puppet. Can I just scotch the rumours that I've bought the balloon of the yellow bikini? I've no intention of doing so.
We'll have to wait and see what Mrs. Khan gets you for your birthday. So let's crack straight on with the call.
I think the first caller is Samantha in Elstree. Good morning, Samantha.
Good morning. Hi. I wanted to ask you, I'm a Jewish woman, 28 years old, and I've been subject to anti-semitism for quite some time now, but it's just got completely out of hand. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn is a totally separate entity by itself, but these posters that have gone up around London, these illegal posters, have honestly, for the first time, made me feel like I should consider someone else, somewhere else, as my new home.
These are posters that are not linked or affiliated with the Labour Party officially in any way, but
no, they're not. But
I'm just for the benefit, Samantha, for the benefit of people who don't know what you're talking about. That's all. I'm just putting in the detail. And the poster says Israel is a racist endeavour, or Israel is an apartheid state.
Israel is a racist endeavour, and I do feel like because of the way that we're not handling the Jeremy Corbyn situation and how anti-Semitic he is, I feel like people are now thinking that it's okay to jump on this bandwagon.
He would again. I have to intervene because you sort of glibly threw in there that Jeremy Corbyn is anti-Semitic. That is a view you're entitled to, but it's something he would very robustly deny. Of course. What question would you like to put to the Mayor?
I want to know how you're going to keep the Jewish people safe, because I certainly don't feel safe right now.
Samantha, one of the biggest responsibilities I have as the Mayor is to make sure that we make people not just safe, but make them feel safe. And you know, the bad news is over the last few years, and last year this has accelerated, there's been an increase of anti-Semitic incidents and anti-Semitic crimes. The first event I attended as Mayor was the Yom HaShoah event, which remembers those who lost their lives in the Holocaust. And if there was a better example of the consequences of anti-Semitism not being tackled, let's go into a Yom HaShoah event and speaking to some of the Holocaust survivors and their families. Just to reassure you, when we got wind yesterday morning of these illegal fly posting of these racist offensive posters on TfL bus stops, action was taken to remove them, and I checked by midday they'd all been taken down. There were 6 across London, but you're right. The ripples of hatred are felt by Jewish Londoners and others across our city, and we've got to make sure we have a zero tolerance towards this. You'll be aware next year we celebrate Rosh Hashanah, the new Jewish New Year, and I'm using the course of the next few days to do my best with the Commissioner and others to reassure Samantha, you, your family, your friends, your colleagues, that we will do what we can to make sure we root out the consequences of anti-Semitism. We should have zero tolerance towards this. And just on the point about the Labour Party, look, I think good political parties reflect society, great ones shape them, and I want there to be an absolutely zero tolerance towards anti-racism, not just in my political party, but in our city and our country. And you're right to remind me that actually in London today, in 2018, there are schools that require protection because they are Jewish schools. There are places of worship that require protection because they're Jewish synagogues, and that can't be right.
What would you like to see happen, Samantha, personally?
My school has had protection, and it's just the craziest thing to think that that's completely normal, and it's really not.
No, quite. And what's really important is we must never be complacent. I mean, the assumption we made a few years ago...
Hang on, you haven't actually answered her question. I appreciate that being complacent is bad, but what are you going to do to make her feel more safe?
Well, one of the things that makes Samantha feel unsafe is this offensive fly posting, and we took them down straight away. If anybody knows about any other illegal fly posting, please let us know. So there's what's happening across London in the fly posting. That's what Samantha was alluding to. That's what the question was about. But we can't just stop there. It's got to be making sure when it comes to Holocaust Memorial Day, when it comes to other events, we remind Londoners and others around the country why it's important to root out anti-Semitism. And by the way, we can't have hierarchies when it comes to racism. Racism is racism. And we know, for example, and this is relevant to recent events, that some anti-Semites use the word Zionist to describe Jewish people. So we've got to make sure we're careful in our language, and what it leads to, if you're not careful with language, is people like Samantha and other Jewish people feeling scared.
Is Jeremy Corbyn facilitating the things that are making people like Samantha feel scared?
No, I don't think so. I know Jeremy Corbyn is not racist. He's not anti-Semitic. But what I do know is some of the things.
What do you think he meant when he said that people who've lived here all their lives don't understand an English sense of irony?
That was unacceptable. And I think what I think we should welcome is the fact that Jeremy Corbyn recognises that anti-Semites are using phrases like Zionist.
So he's not racist and he's not anti-Semitic, but he said something that's unacceptable because it is racist and anti-Semitic.
The words he said were unacceptable, and that paragraph is perceived by many to be racist. And I think it's right and proper that he recognises that the word Zionist has been hijacked by anti-Semites. And Samantha, look, we must always be vigilant. And the point I was making before James rightly cross-questioned me was the point is we can't be careless with our words, because that leads to ultimately the sort of things we're seeing where people are daubing racist posters on bus stops or people being the victims of anti-Semitic attacks.
Thank you, Samantha. It's Paddington, not Kew next. That's incorrect.
Thank you, Samantha, for your call. The next question is from Nick in Kew. Good morning, Nick.
He's in Paddington, actually.
I beg your pardon. Sorry, Nick.
Good morning, Mr. Khan. So, I'm actually a mobile engineer, so I'm going all over the shop. My question is about the Crossrail project.
Yeah.
And the overall governance of that, with the fact that it's now going to allegedly be like up to a year late, which is obviously it's a big project. Is actually one of these things that can happen, but you've still got executives claiming their enormous bonuses with no sign of a visible clawback. But also, what lessons are being going forward for the rumoured Crossrail sort of 2 when that happens, and also. Is there actually a case for legal acts against the companies for false representation?
Yeah, Nick, you've asked 3 or 4 very good questions.
Covered a lot of ground there, Nick.
Yeah,
well done.
So look, I'm not one of these people who, just because in the past there have been other infrastructure projects that have, been delayed and cost huge sums of money, that somehow explains why we should accept delays and overspend with this project. And by the way, infrastructure projects across the world are often late and overspend. That's not good enough for me. I've got a number of concerns about how things have, come to light in the recent past. Up until very recently, Nick, even though, TfL and DfT are joint sponsors of this project, we weren't aware there was going to be a delay from the opening of the central section in December of this year. And we're currently doing some work to see how long that delay is going to be and what the cost implications are going to be. Unfortunately, there are very little levers that we have in relation to the bonuses that you allude to. When Crossrail Limited was first set up, it was intentionally set up to be independent and autonomous. Earlier this year, both the DfT and ourselves, TfL, got more members on the Crossrail Limited board. But unfortunately, we haven't got any locus over the remuneration packages. Last year, I complained about some of the packages that were being received from senior execs in Crossrail, but I had no powers to stop that. But you're right, what we can't be seen to be doing is to be rewarding failure. That's the impression, not unreasonably, you and others have.
What happens at these meetings you have with the Crossrail board? Because you said that you only found out about the delay 2 days before everybody else did. What do you do? Just eat sandwiches together and talk about the football?
I don't attend the Crossrail board meetings. They're separate meetings. What happens is...
But you have briefings with the Crossrail board. That's obviously what I'm referring to.
So the chair of the Crossrail Limited board attends the TfL board meetings, which we hold every few months, and I put on an agenda item when I first became mayor to discuss Crossrail at every TfL board meeting. Separately, at the meetings the commissioner has, the weekly meetings, somebody from Crossrail comes along to those, and separately, the chair of the Crossrail Limited board attends 2 committee meetings of the TfL board. And although we were aware Nick and James, of risks and challenges. And that's not unusual in a big engineering project. Normally these risks and challenges are addressed. What we weren't aware of is the delay in the opening. And that delay in the opening leads to not simply an increase in construction costs, but also revenues being lost as well. And one of the things I'm going to get to the bottom of over the course of the next few days is whether we should have been told sooner about any potential opening being delayed, and if I'd have been told sooner, I'd have been made public sooner as well, and whether I can have complete confidence in the senior team going forward.
£600 million over budget as well.
Well, we're not sure how much over budget is going to be. What we agreed this summer was an increase of £300 million, and one of the pieces of work we're undertaking is to look at the revised schedule. Make sure we've got confidence in that. But you're right, there's going to be consequential cost increases because of the revised schedule.
And see, I hear the phrase from you that you don't have the powers to do it probably more often than any other. What Nick wants to know, and what I want to know, and what almost everybody else listening to this programme wants to know is whose fault is this and how will they be punished?
So the technical answer is there is a Crossrail's remuneration committee on which sits members of the Crossrail Limited board. There is nobody from TfL on that committee. There is nobody from DfT on that committee, as I understand it, and it's for the chair and the chief executive to make sure that the packages are fair and reasonable and nobody's been rewarded for failure. Your listeners will be aware, because this was reported in the media, that the previous chief executive left Crossrail Limited recently, and that's his bonus has been reported in the media. There is a new chief executive who's been in place for a number of months now, who is working with us to make sure we get to the bottom of the revised schedule. But look, Nick, just on your bigger question about what it says about Crossrail and big projects, Crossrail 1, when it opens, will be an amazing new addition to London's infrastructure projects. So it is an amazing engineering feat, but you're right, it's not acceptable for there to be the delay in the overspend, and I'm hoping that we can invest in more infrastructure going forward, because our population is growing and we've got to plan for that growth.
But no one gets punished. No one gets penalised.
Wait and see. Let's wait and see the work we're undertaking now.
I will wait and see, but I'm thinking of the Garden Bridge, which also brings in questions of TfL accountability, and I'm wondering why there's been no movement there.
Well, you can imagine what would happen if we took action that was unlawful and were challenged in the courts and found to be unlawful, and then had to pay compensation, the criticism that people like you would give us for taking actions that are ultra-virus. So I've got to make sure, and I speak as a former lawyer, that I act within the laws and I act intra-virus and make sure nothing I do leads to consequential loss to taxpayers' money. Because look, if I was to sack, somebody from Crossrail Limited or somebody involved in the Garden Bridge project who still works for us, and I was found to have sacked them unlawfully, then the courts would find against us and have to pay more damages, which would be rubbing salt into the injuries.
What about that issue of accountability? The fact that senior TfL officers attended board meetings of the Garden Bridge Trust, and it was that trust that signed that contract with Bouygues, the construction company that is at the source of so much of the money.
Well, I think the previous members of the TfL board who attended those meetings have answered some of those questions in relation to the examinations that have taken place. None of those senior members are involved in my administration so many of them are left. One of the criticisms, if you remember, was the apparent conflict of interest. Some of them left working for the previous mayor and got good jobs with people involved in the Garden Bridge projects. There were corners being cut in relation to procurement, and one of the things that I've done since I became mayor is to make sure we've got proper rigour when it comes to decision making. Even though I've got huge powers, I've made sure that we've brought checks and balances in to stop me using those powers in a way that wastes taxpayers' money.
But you chair TfL. Mm-hmm. TfL is accountable for the Garden Bridge, and
the current board. Yes, I don't do.
But still, you have, retrospective powers of scrutiny, and there's still an awful lot of questions hanging over that £46 million, and an increasing sense that you're just hoping the whole thing will go away.
Not at all. Listen, it gives me, I think, no more pleasure than to blame Boris Johnson for another vanity project leading to huge waste of taxpayers' money. The point is this: since I became mayor, I've made sure no further taxpayers' money of which I've control was spent on this project, even though the likes of the Evening Standard and many others was slagging me off for doing so. I also made sure we gave no further undertakings. I also made sure no blank cheque was written, to huge criticism, by the way, of some of those who are advocates of Boris Johnson and the Garden Bridge. What TfL are in charge of is a sum of money the government's agreed to pay to the Garden Bridge Trust, and I've made sure TfL doesn't release that money. It's not our money, it's the government's money, until we've had the due diligence. But you're right, we've got to make sure we don't waste taxpayers' money on vanity projects or on things that aren't value for money.
Speaking of Boris Johnson's vanity, and answer this as a person, not a politician or a lawyer, do you feel that a politician's private life should have a bearing upon his political life, upon how people judge him politically?
No, I don't. I mean, there are some exceptions.
Not at all.
There are some exceptions we can think of when you do things in your private life that impact upon your public life. There are exceptional reasons why I think it does, but I think everyone is entitled to have a private life. He's a husband, a father, and I've seen the stuff. I've been told the stuff in today's media about his private life, and I think he's entitled to his private life, as indeed his wife and their children.
You don't think there's any mileage in the suggestion that if a man can lie to his wife, then he can lie to his country?
No, I don't want to go there, James. Look, I think the way we conduct our private lives should be, private. There are some exceptional circumstances where the way you conduct your private life does impact upon your public life, and hypocrisy is a good one, where you can talk about, making sure there is sunlight on somebody's private life if they're being hypocrites and stuff. But when it comes to a marriage breaking up, particularly with children involved, I think that should be left private.
Just to clarify something, I've been told you've just been confirmed as this year's guest of honour at the Jewish Board of Deputies annual dinner. Yeah,
and I attend many Jewish events, and it's really important that the Board of Jewish Deputies know that their mayor is somebody who stands shoulder to shoulder with them, particularly in the circumstances that Samantha described, where she is a Londoner, Londoner who is Jewish, is feeling vulnerable and anxious, and I will be there as the Mayor of London, showing the Jewish community that I'm their mayor. The next caller, thank you, Nick, for your call. The next caller is Tim from Southgate. Good morning, Tim.
Morning.
Cheer up,
You're
Tim.
Right, Tim. You don't sound too cheerful.
It might never happen.
Well, we don't know yet.
Hello?
Tim, over to you, Tim.
Right. I'd like to know why you're going to start charging private hire vehicles for the congestion charge.
So, Tim, what you're alluding to is the fact that we are consulting on whether the exemption that currently exists for private hire vehicles should be lifted. So let's wait and see what the consultation results in. But the short answer is, when the congestion charge was first set up in 2003, the expectation was there'd be a few thousand minicabs coming into central London, and one of the reasons why the exemption was given was because in those days there were many unlicensed minicabs, and this was a carrot to encourage unlicensed minicabs to become licensed minicabs. Going from a situation of single-digit thousands, we now have, roughly speaking, 120,000 private hire vehicles licensed across London, many of them coming into the C-charge area and not paying the congestion charge. And one of the things we've got to address is the issue of congestion. So we're consulting on whether that exemption should be lifted, but please feel free and please do respond to the consultation, Tim.
No, it'll go through anyway.
Sorry?
That's another £55 a week we have to pay out.
Well, that's if you come into the congestion. That's if it goes through, but also if you come into the area every day.
You can have a consultation, but whatever you say goes. You don't take no notice of any of us.
Well, what do you mean, Tim? Because nobody is going to put their hand up to pay it, are they? So that's the whole point of government, is that they...
It'll go ahead anyway, won't it?
But why do you get an exemption and normal working people have to pay?
Well, we pay for it to be licensed.
Yes.
We pay for operators licence, which has just gone up from 2,000 something to 6,000 something. We pay all this. We have to. We've got more insurance. We have a test every year for the vehicle. And now we've got to have an English test, which is £400.
If I was a private hire vehicle driver, I would find it pretty hard at the moment not to feel
it
as
is
if...
very hard, that's right.
But also, not just the financial realities, but to feel persecuted. I mean, the field has become incredibly crowded, the bar has been raised in a number of areas that Tim refers to, and then to throw this into the mix as well, environmental concerns notwithstanding, just feels like twisting of the knife.
Tim and you raised a number of different issues about I will not apologise for improving the regulation and safety of private hire vehicles. So I don't apologise for wanting minicab drivers to have a medical, not done by Skype, but done properly. I will not apologise for saying I think it's not unreasonable for minicab drivers to have a decent standard of English, particularly when some of the changes in the laws are written in English and customers often speak English. But what we're consulting on is whether the exemption that private hire vehicles have when they come into the central London area should be lifted. Now, some operators are talking about innovative models where they may decide that some of their drivers stay in the central London area, so they pay the one fee, then they can carry on working there, while other drivers are in outer London. But we're consulting on this, Tim, and it's really important. If you feel strongly about this, you respond to the consultation. If you don't respond because you think it's a fait accompli, and people like you don't respond, then don't be surprised if the only people who respond are those who want this to happen, and it goes through.
But there's two types of job here. There's a chauffeur's job and there's a minicab job. And we're classed as all one.
Well, the figures that I've given you for private hire vehicles are private hire vehicles, the licensing that takes place there. And we are consulting this. And by the way, just to put the other side of the equation, which is really important, which James alluded to, just to set the facts out there, is each year in London, there are more than 9,000 premature deaths caused by poor quality air. But also we know congestion on the roads is causing all sorts of problems for not just those in your trade, but for those who get around London because they need their vehicle, whether they're plumbers, whether they're electricians, whether they're in construction. So we do need to address the issue of congestion as well. So we're consulting, Tim, and it's really important. People like you who feel strongly about this respond to the consultation.
How close are you to chucking it all in, Tim?
I feel like chucking in today.
Do you really? So if you get hit with another charge every time you drive into the capital, that could be the straw that breaks the camel's back.
The business is going down and down, and it's costing us more and more every year.
Well, I just say this.
But it's going down and down
sure,
and down.
It's really important we just are accurate with the facts. You know, so the number of minicab drivers in London is going up and up, not down and down. So if we were having this conversation in 2003, we were talking about single-digit taxi drivers, minicab drivers. If we're having this conversation in 2007-8, we'd be talking about 55,000 private hire vehicle licensing. Now it's 120,000. So let's be accurate with the facts. We can have a conversation about the black taxis, which are going down and down. They're roughly speaking 20,000 now. But what's important, though, is we've put these plans out to consultation and for you to respond to the consultation. But it's really important to recognise that, you know, we can have a race to the bottom and cut regulation and cut corners, or try and improve standards to make sure we have the best minicab service, private vehicle service in the world, but make sure that everyone pays a proportionate amount.
And do get involved in that consultation, Tim. Let me know if you feel that your voice has or has not been heard.
Thank you, Tim. The next call is from Kidbrooke, and it's from Morris. Good morning, Morris.
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, I'd just like to ask you why you're not building enough council houses.
Well, Morris, thank you for asking that question, because it gives me a chance to remind listeners that I'm the first mayor to have a package to fund council homes. So the package I've announced will lead to 10,000 new council homes being started in the next 4 years. I've said to councils across London, you've got until the end of September to respond to my announcement of this new money. And the good news, Morris, is that councils across London are really excited by this new package that I've announced, which is 10,000 new council homes over the next 4 years. And just to tell you why it's important, besides the obvious reasons for the need for more genuinely affordable homes, and I speak as a former council house living in a family who lived in a council house, over the last 40 years, since 1979, 1980, when people had the right to buy their council homes in London, 300,000 council homes have been sold off, but the amount built to replace them is only 60,000. So for every 5 council homes sold off, only one has been built. So I'm doing a number of things. The new financial package, but also I'm lobbying the government to give councils more powers to build council homes. And one of the reasons why councils can't build council homes is because they're not allowed to borrow to build. And some of the rules there are in relation to the monies they've got from the receipts from council homes right to buy, they can't use. So I'm also at the same time as giving them the funding, lobbying the government for more powers to build more council homes.
Right, that's all well and good. You say 10,000. I'd like to know how many people are actually waiting for houses. And also, all I hear is affordable housing. Well, what's affordable housing? If you want,
hang on a minute. I'll come in here. Morris, you can find out waiting list numbers via Google, but your point about affordable housing is fascinating, because aren't you supposed to have built 14,000 affordable homes this year? We're supposed
to. So let me ask Morris' question first, then your question. So Morris, what's an affordable house? You're right. The definition of an affordable home is dodgy. So the definition there used to be for an affordable home was one of two things: a home costing £450,000 to buy that was affordable under Boris Johnson and the government, or a home where you pay in rent 80% of market value, not what you earn, but market value of the rent. I think that definition is dodgy, so I've thrown it in the bin. So I've got a more stringent and tougher definition. I think when I negotiate with developers, I say my requirement for an affordable home is one of three things: either a home where you pay a social rent, that's the council home, Morris, or it's a home where you pay a London living rent. That's a third of average earnings. So it's based on earnings rather than market value of rent. Or it's three, the third type of an affordable home is where you have shared equity, part mortgage and part rent. So I've thrown the dodgy definition in the bin, Morris, and I've got a new definition, which is the definition used by experts. So that's what I mean by an affordable home. The question James asked is about the how many homes I should have started. So last year, I had a target that we should have 12,500 genuinely affordable homes started. That, by the way, would have been a record. No mayor's done that before since power was devolved. I beat that target. So last year, we began more than 12,500 genuinely affordable homes. And by the way, Morris, out of those 12,500, 2,800 were homes where you pay social rent, council type rent. That's more than the previous 4 years put together. That's last year. This year, I've said, you know what? I broke the record last year, 12,500. I don't think that's good enough. We need to build far more homes. So this year, my target is 14,000. And if we were to achieve that, that would not just break the record, but it would smash the best record that's been in the past.
What are we up to?
So in the first quarter, we've reached 1,000. And just to give you an idea, that's 6 times more than the first quarter last year.
It's a hell of a lot less than 14,000, though.
Well, no, but the way planning works is you start slowly in quarter one and it builds up. And quarter four, by the way, don't be surprised if quarter four sees a big spike. And that's just the way the housing industry works because of the financial year. But quarter one this year is 6 times what we did last year. And by the way, of those 1,000 genuinely affordable homes, more than a third of those with the social rent that Morris is talking about. And by the way, that 300 of those which are social rents is still more than what the previous mayor did in his last year. So look, I appreciate we are going to fix the housing crisis overnight. We are making progress.
So when exactly is the finish line for your 14,000 started deadline?
End of March. So the way it works
March
is the
2019.
Correct. So
just as Brexit happens,
or not, as the case may be. But yes, the way it works is so we work in the financial year. By the way, the reason why we do, and it's frustrating, Morris, is that's the deal we've made with the government to work in financial years, and it's based on starts, and those are the rules that the government's given us in relation to the funding we've secured.
Hello, yeah. Right. What about the developers that have the affordable property, build the property, and then when it comes to it, they don't let so many houses go. They can't afford, say, 10%. It's going to be 5%. That was on the news the other night.
I'm not sure the example you mean, but there is a concept called land banking. We've got examples where developers buy a piece of land and don't build in it because they want the value to go up. The example I think you're talking about is with the current uncertainty around Brexit, some of the properties that were built for market value sale haven't been sold. They're sitting there empty. And that's one of the reasons I'm saying to developers, look, if it is the case that because of the uncertainty around Brexit, uncertainty around construction workers, you can't sell the homes that are market value homes or luxury homes, even more reason to work with me to build homes that we know will go very, very quickly, which are genuinely affordable homes. They could be homes to rent or they could be homes to sell where there's a market discount. And by the way, just so you know, Morris, we give developers a contribution if they agree to build genuinely affordable homes. So if a developer's listening, you won't lose out by building these genuinely affordable homes. Sure, you won't make the same big profits you made in the past, but all the evidence is what Londoners need are genuinely affordable homes.
Have you been? Thank you, Morris. Have you been? And I'll keep an eye on those numbers. Don't worry. Have you been following Theo Usherwood's story this morning about the Labour Party member who's been threatening violence against Labour MPs?
As I came in, somebody told me about the story. I've not heard it firsthand.
It's pretty much as I just stated it. We've got the identity of the chap responsible, but Theo's elected not to reveal who it is. Threatening to give Luciana Berger a good kicking on a Facebook post that's still up. Is that the sort of thing Jeremy Corbyn should be moving quickly to address? Yeah,
look, the Labour Party's got to move far quickly. If there are Labour Party members who are making threats, that sounds like a criminal threat to me, or evidence of anti-Semitism. And one of the things we've got to do is speed up those investigations of members against whom concerns are raised.
What if actual sitting MPs turn out to be Facebook friends with this person? Because it appears that, for example, Chris Williamson is.
That's more difficult. I don't know the exact example and stuff, but you know, I mean, you've got hundreds of thousands of followers on Twitter and Facebook and stuff. I mean, all I'd say is, as somebody who also has got lots and lots of followers, I think I've got something 3 million followers on my mayoral account, and loads on my. It's difficult to keep on top of this, and you often. That's not me bragging, by the way. Eddie's a bit. But it is difficult, and sometimes when you become a friend with somebody on social media, you've not gone through every single post they've ever done. To see if they said anything obnoxious or racist.
Last one, I think.
Thanks. The last question is from Waterloo. It's John. Good morning, John.
Morning, Mr. Khan. I'd like to ask you, with the recent low emission zones brought in, I'm a London taxi driver, licensed taxi driver. I bought a brand new cab last year. This morning, I picked up a blind passenger from Kensington going to 25 Tabernacle Street. TfL rules state that I'm not allowed to refuse the job. The person didn't know the area, so I had to drop him off away from 25 Tabernacle Street because I'm not allowed in there. Can you explain what you're going to do for us taxi drivers, licensed taxi drivers, Hackney Carriage, that bought a Euro 6 taxi only last year, and now we're not allowed in that zone with a blind or disabled passenger?
It's a good question. Can you answer it in a way that engages my listeners in Alicante and Glasgow?
Yeah, let me just, for those other listeners in Alicante and Glasgow, basically some councils in London have brought in rules themselves, which they're entitled to do, which obviously John is concerned about, because obviously some of the roads I'm in charge of, roughly speaking, less than 5%, 95% the councils are in charge of. And what John's alluding to is the apparent irrationality in relation to John having a cracking new taxi, which is, complies with all the things we want to do and being penalised by the council. John, one of the things we're trying to do with the council is to speak with them to make sure this irrationality doesn't carry on, because you're right, you've done the right thing, you've bought a good vehicle, but also your customer is somebody who really needs to be dropped off outside the property. John, watch this space. We're trying to make some progress with councils, because they're good intentions, by the way, John. The intentions were good. But you've been penalised as a consequence, and so like other things, I do report back to LBC, by the way, when I've actioned casework, and this one as well, John. When there is progress, I'm not going to promise progress overnight, because different councils are bringing up new policies and stuff. We've got to have some joined upness and stuff. By the way, with the same problem when it comes to cycle hire schemes in relation to coordination across London, and you're giving one example of the challenges there are with 32 boroughs, 33 if you include City of London, and having one set of rules.
Thank you, John. Comment here from Ian. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, is turning into Donald Trump on LBC. I'm the best mayor that London has ever had, says Ian.
Well, Ian makes true.
Well, we might examine that record next time you're here. Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London, many thanks indeed. Time now for the news headlines with Simon Conway.
Sadiq Khan has told LBC comments Jeremy Corbyn made about British Zionists in a speech 5 years ago were unacceptable. But the London Mayor's insisted the Labour leader is not a racist. Mr Khan says the party must speed up how it deals with complaints about anti-Semitism.